Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Ajoe21love. Here we're at part 2 of episode 25 of Sports Overview Topics. Today on the podcast, I'll be going over the rest of the games of Week 13, Monday games, as well as last night's game between the Ravens and the Cowboys, as well as my Week 14 predictions. But we're hitting that home stretch of the 2020 regular season, football season. I mean, we're finding out the pretenders, the contenders, those teams that are making those late strides in the season to make a push for the postseason. Games are getting tighter. It's getting colder, and we're gonna find out who are legit, basically, in this home stretch of this last month of the regular season. But with that, if you're new to the podcast, like and subscribe, click on that bell for notifications. And with that, let's get into the rest of the games from Week 13, shall we? So, Washington, Pittsburgh. Now, was a really good game on Monday evening. Depends where you live, but was not a nationally televised game, but was a fun game. Washington hands Pittsburgh their first loss of the season, 23-17. Now, we'll say for Pittsburgh is you can see the last couple weeks they've been kind of treading water on their offense, basically. Last week it was a struggle against Baltimore. They dropped passes. They lost Bud Dupree, obviously. Of course, they lost Devin Bush and early in the season. So you can kind of see that their defense was missing some parts. Second of all, they do miss James Conner. He's now a workhorse back, not a guy that'll give you 1,000 yards each season, but he's a lift over the running backs they have. Benny Snell, Jalen Samuels, Anthony McFarland could not get anything done on the Washington defense on Monday. That was a step. Also, Big Ben throwing it 50 times a game is not a good recipe for success when it comes to this Pittsburgh Steelers team. And now it started off 14-0. It was a scoreless first quarter, but the Steelers got a good drive and hit a short touchdown to Deontay Johnson to go up ahead 7-0. Then next thing you know, it's 14-0 after a big play by Big Ben. But it's just at the end of the first half, the last drive of the Washington, they were driving down. They hit a few nice plays. And there was a weird sequence in the half. Alex Smith, after he was sacked on third down, he took the ball off the field with him and that caused the play clock to freeze up and stop. So they had to go back, get the ball, or get the right game ball, and they wound up kicking a field goal to end the half, which kind of saved them. Then the third quarter arrived, and you're like, okay, the Washington got the ball. They had another good drive. They got a touchdown. Antonio Gibson, he went out to start the game with a toe injury, but Alex Smith stepped up through some good plays to Cam Sims, Logan Thomas. You knew with Antonio Gibson being out that the Steelers were not going to get beat by Terry McLaurin. And Cam Sims, he had over 90 yards receiving. Logan Thomas had over 90 yards. They got a touchdown. Steelers hauled up with a field goal, but Washington kept fighting, and they tied up thanks to a good touchdown by Logan, thrown from Alex Smith to Logan Thomas. And you kind of had a feeling because the way Washington's defense, who are very underrated, Chase Young, Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, Ryan Kerrigan, Montez Sweat, that defense, very underrated. They kept their offense in the game. And Montez Sweat, he had himself a day. 3 bad balls, along with the third bad ball, which led to the game-sealing interception by John Bostic. Washington moves to 5-7. They stay tied with the Giants. Tied for first place. And I tell you, I would not want to see any of those teams in the postseason. The Giants or Washington. But you can kind of tell that Alex Smith, he's getting more comfortable. He had 296 yards passing. He's just getting more comfortable. With that offense, he's just finding his rhythm. And be interesting to see how they come down the home stretch. As far as Pittsburgh goes, they're still a good team. They're still a very solid team. Big Ben. The offensive line is still quality. They obviously have a good core of receivers. You still got T.J. Watt, Stephon Tuitt. That secondary is really good. It's just, I think, as we get into this home stretch for the playoffs, in order for them to be successful in the postseason, they need to find more balance on offense. Because this is not the best recipe. And when it comes to, say, a game against the Chiefs, the Titans, again, the Browns, the Bills, when you look at some of these teams, it's going to be really difficult if they don't make some adjustments for them to compete with some of these other offenses in the AFC. But good for Washington. Obviously, Pittsburgh has to go back to the drawing board. And we'll see Sunday night, Pittsburgh and Buffalo, which we'll go to next. So, Monday Night Football, it was Buffalo playing San Francisco in Arizona. Now, obviously, San Francisco's stadium has been put on ice for a few weeks, at least, due to COVID. So, Arizona, which is a home of their division rival Cardinals, is their temporary home. But the story of this game was, how would the Bills continue this momentum? And the 49ers, the Cardinals and the Vikings at 6-6, tied for the 7th seed. It's not totally out of it for the 49ers, but this was kind of a game they needed to win, or they had to win. And it was just Josh Allen throwing it all around the 49ers defense. Now, this was a crazy start to begin the game. So, both teams had goal line stands to start the game of the opposing team. And then the Bills fumbled it right inside the 5, which gave the 49ers their first touchdown. And you were a little worried, would that be the deciding factor? But Josh Allen and the Bills, they just cooled heads. Cole Beasley had himself a really good night. Josh Allen, he just spread the wealth. I would just bit myself, but Josh Allen just spread the wealth, and they just had their way with the 49ers defense and kind of exposed that secondary of the 49ers. 34-24. Now, so that was Monday Night Football. Now, Tuesday Night Football. Very interesting. Cowboys at Ravens. Both teams kind of needed this win as we go into the postseason. Dallas 3-8, 2 games out of first place, or a game and a half out of first place. Ravens need this game. Otherwise, if they fall to 500, then they're in deep trouble. But now this game was pretty close to start. The score will say otherwise, but this game was relatively close. I mean, it was a pick by Lamar Jackson, which set up the Cowboys settling for a field goal. And then Ravens, after a while, they allowed their running to pick apart the Cowboys, and it was a big punt return or a kick return by the Cowboys, which set them up in good position for a touchdown. Next thing you know, it's 10-7, and you're very curious to see how this will go because both offenses were kind of having their way, and special teams really helped the Cowboys. But over time, it was the Ravens' running attack that exploited the Cowboys' defense. The Cowboys' offense, they didn't really have much trouble um, moving up and down the field. It was just 3 field goals missed by Greg Zuerlein, which would have made it a one-score game. Also, at the end of the first half, the Cowboys, there was a missed pass interference call on CeeDee Lamb, which would have set the Cowboys up in field goal range at the end of the half, but instead they had to settle for a near Hail Mary at the end of the first half, which they almost connected on. Almost. But, yeah, the Ravens did what they needed to do. They moved to 7-5, still alive in the AFC playoff picture. Cowboys dropped 3-9. I mean, the Cowboys have just fallen short of expectations this whole year. Before Dak's injury and since Dak's injury, their Achilles heel continues to be the defense, lack of defense. The question is, will they get players to, because they got talent on that front seven. You know, Jalen Smith, Lane Van Der Esch, Crawford, Alden Smith, DeMarcus Lawrence. It's just whether or not they get rid of Mike Nolan and his scheme, or they get players that fit his scheme is ultimately the question. I mean, if you're a Cowboys fan, you're obviously looking towards next year. Because with all the injuries and especially to that O-line, that offense has been what it used to be. But very curious to see where the Cowboys go. All right, so those are my thoughts on, or those are my recap of the rest of the games for Week 13. Now I'll get into my predictions for Week 14 of the NFL season. Some really interesting games going into Week 14. And we start off in a good way. Tomorrow night, Super Bowl 53 rematch. Patriots stay in SoFi Stadium. They play the Rams. The Rams coming off that good win over Arizona. The Patriots have gone back to 500, 6-6. They shut out the Chargers on Sunday. I think I just see that the Patriots, we instill some of the schemes and we still find a way to contain the Rams offense enough. The Patriots offense make enough plays and they win 28-21. That's what I have. Vikings in Tampa. Tampa Bay. Well, both these teams are in the playoff picture as we speak, in the wild card picture. Vikings were 1-5, have been 5-1 since. Bucks, they've been kind of reeling, but the Vikings struggled versus the Jaguars. And it wasn't necessarily Kirk Cousins and the offense, it was that defense that let them down. And their Achilles heel continues to be that secondary, that young and experienced secondary. And this is kind of a get-right game for the Bucks that they need to have if they're going to make the playoffs. So I have the Buccaneers winning 27-24. Tom Brady, with those weapons, will exploit that secondary of the Vikings. Now, the Vikings, with a loss, will not be out of it. They will still be 6-7 with 3 winnable games left. Well, so they can still very well make a play. Both teams with the loss could still certainly make the playoffs, but I'm going with the Buccaneers to win over the Vikings. Next up, an interesting one as well. Cardinals going to Meadowlands to play the Giants. Giants have won 4 straight. Cardinals have lost 3 straight. Question is, what is the health status of Kyler Murray and Daniel Jones? Obviously, we saw the Giants defense harass Russell Wilson and the Seahawks offense in Seattle. And Cardinals, they made some good plays on Sunday, but you can just tell that Kyler Murray is still not 100%. And I worry that shoulder might still not be 100%. And against this defense, which is getting better and better week by week, I'm going with the Giants to win, extend their winning streak to 5, and they went 24-22. Cardinals have enough firepower to keep it close, but I just think with the lack of 100% by Kyler Murray that they will be in trouble. Next up, another doozy. You got the Chiefs going to Miami, playing the Dolphins. Mahomes versus Tua. Should be a fun one. Now, but Brian Flores knows how to defend against the Chiefs from his time in New England. So that's a touch Also, Tua, how does this high-powered offensive Chiefs fare against the really good secondary of the Dolphins? I mean, they may stifle the Chiefs most of the way, but I just think the Chiefs get past the Dolphins and they win 28-27 over Miami. Next up, Titans going to Jacksonville. Now, Mike Vrabel's probably pissed about how his defense got picked apart by Baker and the Browns on Sunday. Against the Jags, maybe Mike Glenn, but I just think the Titans better team. This is a game they get back on track and they win 28-17. And they move to 9-4 on the season. Next up, Andy Dalton revenge game. Cowboys go to Cincinnati. Cincinnati had that ugly look in that game versus Miami. Cowboys, they did their part against Baltimore on Tuesday. And they just got more firepower. They got more talent on offense. And I think Andy Dalton facing his former team would like nothing better than to get a win. Kind of sad that we don't get Andy Dalton versus Joe Burrow. But the offense, I think, will do enough. And Cowboys win 24-20. Next up, Texans going to Chicago. Bears have lost 6 straight since starting 5-1. Excuse me. Trubisky looked good on Sunday versus the Bears. Not sure who's going to start, but this is interesting because Deshaun Watson did not get an interview with the Bears prior to the 2017 draft, where the Bears ultimately selected Mitchell Trubisky. And Texas lost in a heartbreaker against the Colts. I think Deshaun Watson will have a little extra element knowing he was picked, or the Bears picked Trubisky over him, and that will be an added element. And the Texans win 24-20. They get the job done in Chicago. Next up, Broncos going to Carolina. Broncos, they held their own against the Chiefs on Sunday night. Panthers off a bye. This Matt Rule's first time off a bye. I think whether or not Christian McCaffrey plays, I just like now the Broncos will probably feel a little deflated knowing they had the Chiefs on the ropes a little bit, and they lost. So they may feel a little deflated going in this game. So I'm going with the better team, Carolina Panthers, to win 23-19. Next up, we got the Jets going to Seattle. Jets almost won against the Raiders on Sunday, but were ultimately denied. Seahawks got pushed around against the Giants. This is a game the Seahawks are a little bit on the ropes. In order to make the playoffs, this is obviously a game they must have. 28-6, I got the Seahawks. Next up, Colts. This should be really interesting. Colts going to Vegas. What may be for a playoff spot. Colts currently the number 7 seed. Raiders the 8th seed. What is the status of Josh Jacobs? That's the ultimate question. And the Colts, they were back and forth versus the Raiders. I just think the better team right now is the Colts. We have to see what the status of Josh Jacobs is, but John Gruden is optimistic. But I'm going with the Colts to win 23. So next up, Washington going to San Francisco. Washington, they handed Pittsburgh their first loss of the season. San Fran got their defense exploited by Josh Allen on Monday night. This is an interesting game because both are 5-7 and both still have a chance at the playoffs. But Alex Smith, their defense is getting better. He's getting more comfortable. And I'm going with Washington over San Fran in Arizona, 26-17. Next up, the Saints going to Philly to play Jalen Hurts and the Eagles in his first start. Now, the Saints, this is likely going to be Taysom Hill again, but the Saints defense has probably been the best in the NFL over the last month. Maybe a little overrated considering who they face. So I think Jalen Hurts will still score some points on them. But ultimately, the Saints are the better team. And I'm going with them to win 31-20 over the Eagles. Next up, at the Falcons going to SoFi Stadium to play the Chargers. I mean, talk about two teams that have been kind of disappointments throughout the season, but Atlanta has been fighting under Raheem Morris. They have looked slightly better on offense. Against the Chargers, they just look a mess. Did not score a point on Sunday for the Patriots. And I'm going with the Falcons to win 29-24. Next up, Green Bay going to Detroit. Darrell Bevell's second game as interim head coach. Green Bay, they were kind of on the ropes versus Philly, but I think Green Bay knows they're in play for the 1 seed in the NFC. And Detroit, they have potential to spoil the party for Green Bay. And I think Detroit will play them tough, but I'm going with Green Bay to win 28-23 in Detroit. Now we got Sunday Night Football. A good one. Steelers in Buffalo. Steelers coming off their first loss of the season against the 9-3 Bills. And Josh Allen has been on a roll. The Steelers still have quality offense. They still have a good defense. It's just the question of, can they push the narrative more on offense and be more balanced? Because they weren't balanced against Washington at all. Buffalo has been more explosive than Pittsburgh, and I expect them. I mean, right now they have the better offense, and their defense is very solid as well, which is getting better and better over the weeks. So I'm going with Buffalo to win 24-21. Buffalo gets their 10th win on the season, and that makes Monday night's game much more interesting. As Baltimore, to close out Week 14, Baltimore goes to Cleveland on Monday night. Browns Ravens Part 2 this season. Now, in Week 1, Baltimore blew out Cleveland. Now, that was Cleveland to start the season. They kind of let the game get away from them. They couldn't implement their style, and they had their hands forced. So Cleveland, they showed they're a legit team against the Titans. Now it's just a matter of proving that against the Ravens, and I think they can do what they need to do, implement their style, and they're a different team, a better team than they were Week 1. I'm going with the Browns to win 30-23 over the Ravens. Get their 10th win on the season. and make things much more interesting in the AFC South or North, excuse me. So those are my thought predictions on week 14. I was 11-4 on my predictions for week 13. And so I'm hoping to keep that good momentum going into week 14. Hopefully have another double-digit win season or week. So we'll see how it goes. But that was the episode. So thank you for joining me. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, if you're new, like and subscribe to check out my predictions, my recaps, all that. If you hadn't seen it yesterday, post my part 1. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you all tomorrow with my AEW Dynamite review.